Okay, just getting this all set up. Difundir el enlace. Okay. Okay. Welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your Untitled Anarchist Seagull. And this is our Saturday night stream. We stream every Saturday night and Friday night between roughly 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. EDT. And as we're getting started, I'm just going to start out with the ACAB Daily Digest. This is brought to you courtesy of OLAASM on Twitter. And if you're looking for somebody to follow to keep an eye on what's going on in the world of cops, OLAASM is definitely worth following. A great source of information on the subject. So the first item is that Colombia has not yet stopped resisting Duque's regime. Let me see. There's video. Let me pop the video on. As you may be aware, Colombia has joined Chile in just frank revolt against a US-backed right-wing regime in the past several months, after a couple of very high participation general strikes over the past couple of years. There's very little reporting on this in English language sources. You could get the idea that nothing's going on there, but the reality is that the cops and state-backed fascist paramilitaries are going around just murdering people. And the people there are fighting back. Item 2. Israel's Palestinian Authority continues to perform its appointed function under the Oslo Accords, which is to terrorize and torture Palestinians who are suspected of resisting the occupation in some way. In the media, you'll often hear the Palestinian Authority referred to as if it were some sort of an independent Palestinian government, and it's important to understand that it's not. And Mahmoud Abbas isn't president of shit. The only actual term of elective office he ever held ended in 2009. He has been serving at Israel's pleasure ever since then, despite massive opposition to him and his collaborationism. And so here we see PA police doing Israel's work for them, dragging a protester on the ground in Ramallah. Now, in case you were wondering whether Democrats were better on police accountability issues, the de Blasio administration in New York City is trying to delay turning over documents and discovery in the related to lawsuits over the NYPD's violence against last year's protests. Where is this? In Colorado, a guy who was hailed as a hero for shooting a suspect who had apparently shot a cop earlier in this week was shot by the cops while holding the suspect's rifle. So, there, as OLAASM says, cops will summarily execute your good guy with a gun, too. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, it appears that the murder of Terrence Franklin in 2013 by Minneapolis police may actually be investigated by the Minneapolis police. And Israel's sending robots with machine guns to the Palestinian border, to the border of the Gaza Strip. So that continues to be fucking horrible. In case you were thinking that, you could have gotten the idea, especially if you listen to liberal Zionists, that the real problem was just Netanyahu, and if as soon as they got rid of him, everything would be okay. But first of all, the reality is that the Labour Party there has a much worse historical human rights record than Likud. For another thing, Naftali Bennett is a fucking genocidal prick. He's just openly genocidal. He brought Ayelet Shaked, back to cabinet. She became notorious because she posted a Facebook post saying that she wanted to just exterminate all Palestinians, including pregnant women and children, because they were all going to end up being in the resistance anyway. Dimitri Lanahan was shot by cops in Anchorage, Alaska, and similar in Bradley County, Tennessee. They decided where a so-called mental health call resulted in cops shooting people, which is why shooting a guy in a mental health crisis by the name of Michael Anthony Frederick, which is why you should never fucking call the cops on somebody in a mental health situation. They will never make it better. You will probably end up with blood on your hands. Okay, and a Memphis police officer has been relieved of duty pending the outcome of an investigation of a crash that left 2 people dead Friday evening. So that is the ACAB Daily Digest for the 26th of June, and if you find this sort of information useful and are interested in even more information, it's a very informative channel Craig manages over there, then follow OLAASM on Twitter. And also, he's got a Patreon. And let me just give you that as well. And well, you'll see that all that information is on his Twitter page. That's OLAASM. Okay. And let us change gears now and play a little bit of chess. Get the music going. We'll start out. Okay. What was that was just taken? Ah, hell. Okay. How's this crop looking? Yeah, okay, good. Good crop. And yes. Ah, shit. Ah, well, there goes my rook. Next. Okay, that catches me up on the dailies. Okay, let's play some rapid. Okay, get the English on the board. There's Saeed, 1, 2, 3, 4. Work on this system I've been learning. Oh, wants to Scandinavianize this. Okay. Let's see, does he do it correctly? Okay. Okay, E4. This is theory. This is a normal developing move in the Botvinnik system, which is what I've been learning lately. And it's handy. Oh, he's got his king on the same diagonal as his queen. That can't possibly go wrong. One thing I do like about Lead Chess is you can actually set the game up in Welsh. Although there's one little mistranslation here. In English it says, like, be nice in chat. And in Welsh it says, siarad yn y sgwrs. And siarad yn y sgwrs just means talk in chat, which, if you needed that information, I think probably that you weren't going to get a whole lot of benefit out of the chat anyway. Okay. Uh-huh. That's fine. So I'm castling, and if he tries what he wants to try there, then I just get a knight and a queen for a rook. I can think of worse trades. This is what he's looking at here. He's got this queen looking at f2, got the knight looking at f2. Let's make this queen a little bit less comfortable, shall we? See, because I want to open up this F-file here. So, if he were to take on F2 with that knight, if they were to take on F2 with that knight, okay, so now let's just keep attacking that queen. It's such a juicy little target. And my knight here on d5, which is where I want my knight to be. Notice, look at the development here. We've got 1, 2, 3... 4, 5 pieces on their initial positions. Okay, you can go ahead and take that. because I've got something better. Hey, Erica, how are you tonight? Okay. So that fucks up my forking idea, at least temporarily. This is a nice little position here for my bishop. It's kind of a annoying place to have it. I can think of much better places for it to be, but oh, not bad. Been sort of a boring day, mostly. Okay, I'll use this to just fuck about with the king a little. Okay, is there any continuation for this other than... Oh, it was. At least I didn't have any work to do. That was an improvement in that regard. Had a sort of a light week, which I really do not mind. Okay. Really quite uncertain where this is going. Although at the moment he's up two pieces and a pawn, which not really the outcome I was looking for, but I think I see a few tactics where it'll let me redress that balance. No. Okay, that fucks up that plan. Fine. Then, the question is, where do I go from here? About the most excitement I had was driving up to Dayton for a little bit. Other than that, not a whole hell of a lot. My mother was picking up a supermarket order. Delicious bread and a fish. A partial fish. Yeah, Dayton was very exciting in that regard, but you take your excitement where you can get it at the moment. You're in Wisconsin, right? Simplify this down to an end game. If it has any sense, they will not take this. And then I can try to regain a bit of initiative. Oh, right, yeah. Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota sort of went together for me. Northern places on lakes that have strange ideas about water fountains and wood chippers. Okay, that could have gone better. Ah, fuck, that wasn't good. Thank you. Okay. And so you see, the only thing needed for evil to triumph is for good to blunder a queen and possibly also, and a knight. Yes, also definitely a knight. Okay, not a knight. How's the weather up there? Okay. Thank you. A little rain. I wouldn't have minded a little rain, really. And, mow the lawn because we're supposed to be getting some major storms coming up. Okay. Mating ritual initiated. And GG. Oh, rematch, yeah, why not? Ware eto. It's bloody hot here. That's an interesting place to put a queen. Okay, if you insist. Fuck around with your queen again. Okay, potentially I've got a rook lined up. Take it. One thing I have to say I love about this country is how there's this idea that we should pretend that the pandemic is over right before a predicted next wave is about to happen. I mean, it's like these fuckers just want this to keep on going forever. Oh, thank you. Gochiso-sama. I mean, this... I don't even have really a word for it at this point. I was sick of it sometime at the end of last year. And now I've reached this whole new level of it sickness. Okay. Possible tactic here. Started to finally work a little bit, work on the format of this thing. So what I've worked out. Thank you. That's a queen and a rook for a queen. Can't beat that. Now let's just threaten that rook of yours. Ah, fuck it. So since I often don't have anyone show up anyway, or at least for long segments of it, I've started to just sort of record segments that I can then go on and recycle as freestanding videos, and I think it's kind of working out very nicely, especially now I've finally figured out how to set up my other proper camera, my non-webcam cam, so that I can put in 2 separate angles. Just kind of break up the visual a bit. Okay. Okay. In the Polyglots group I'm on Facebook, somebody writes, "Would you change something about your country?" It's like, I think even Facebook's character limit might not be quite enough. Oh, hell. Would you change something about your country? How long you got? Your friend Allison has pointed out a wonderful insult from Korean television. May you be spattered with boiling fecal water and fester until you die. Yeah, and now I have my birthday card for Joe Biden. Well, I mean, I guess there is a short version. I'd say, okay, yes, there's really nowhere near enough communism. If we could just have some of that, that would be cool. Yeah, just have some communism. And maybe stop, this whole trend where... I mean, think about it. Actually, half of the presidents since the 1990s in the U.S. have been rapists. Fully half! I mean, fuck knows, maybe there's just shit we haven't heard about George W. Bush, but we heard a lot of shit about George W. Bush when he was president, so I think that would have come out. So that's like 2 and 2. That's not much of a record. So yeah, maybe a few things I might possibly tweak a little. Okay, I really need to link up my rooks here. Okay, linked up my rooks in style, and I've got a nice open file on the C file. Okay, that wasn't what I was trying to do, but it doesn't really hurt me. At this point, I would have to fuck up fairly impressively in order to... But then, I shouldn't say things like this because I fucked up pretty... Again, I fucked up pretty impressively in that last game and I still ended up checkmating. Ah, well, okay, have a good night. I'm glad you joined me. Check on the YouTube channel and see if there might be some interesting bits coming. I haven't completely decided what I'm going to do. So, have a good night. Oh. Yes, yeah, I'm enjoying that. Did you see that he actually like showed up in my chat and then tried to put me on fucking on blast with on Twitter? I mean, how the fuck did he even find me? Nobody, like, even people I know don't show up at this fucking stream for the most part. And he showed up to challenge me to a debate, and I got his, like, dickhead followers going, debate him, coward. And it's like, why? I have absolutely no idea what benefit could possibly come of that. I have much more fun God. He said I looked terrified. He didn't know that what he was actually seeing, since I was on a delay, wasn't looking at my chat, was that I just blundered a rook. Yes, that's why I looked like that. Oh, actually, fuck it. No, I can think of worse things than this. Yeah, I mean, I really think, actually, I would have a lot more viewers, potentially, if I did it, but, I mean, it's a fucking... I mean, to me, it's a matter of principle and also just not wanting to deal with him. I mean, the one nice thing about there being this whole bunch of Ohio, and, I mean, no, beyond the... Well, then again, he's not in Ohio anymore, he's in New York, with all the international bankers, apparently. He likes to hang out with them, or something. I guess he wants to be close to that, so he can come up with the latest conspiracy ideas there. But, yeah. I mean, nobody's fucking heard of me. But I might actually do fairly well off it. But still, I don't give a fuck. Ugh. But and now it turns out a BreadTube is supposedly plotting to assassinate him just in time for him to bring out a book about BreadTube. Where he's... I mean, like, literally just a book about people disagreeing with him on the internet, which... I mean, that's wonderful reading. Yeah, and to the extent, whatever. And the thing is, it's not like BreadTube is even an actual organization, it's a Reddit thread. And the main attitude of BreadTube towards him is that he's just a goldmine of fucking material. The goose that laid the golden Dugan. Good game. Actually, I don't think I'm going to do another rematch. I think I'm going to switch over since I've only got about half an hour left in this stream. And yes, I mean, that's what BreadTube is. I mean, yeah, although he thinks Destiny is BreadTube. Fuck knows why. I mean, I think he just thinks that everyone who isn't impressed with Marxism-Leninism is BreadTube? Okay. Gonna get back to, they will not silence us.
See, they disavow it. According to ContraPoint's own video, she herself must be a fascist.
Oh, that's right. Where we left off, he was explaining why it's a horrible thing for ContraPoints to have done a video pointing out the sort of low-key signs that fascists give. I haven't seen the video, but I mean, it is true that fascists give like all sorts of low-key signs because they don't want to openly identify because they've got kind of a bad rep. But for some reason, Caleb, who's totally not a fascist, finds this concerning. Good night.
Wrote it down.
Hey, before you go, how's the sound here?
Quite ridiculous. I mean,
can you hear me and him?
Fascist. So there you go. Now, Ricky Rousseau is a crypto-fascist mopanoid for the CPUSA. Great to meet you, Rick. Yeah, I saw that somebody put out on the internet.
God, that's much more interesting than the CPUSA actually is. I mean, that's just DSA with extra steps. I mean, how you get from Marxism-Leninism to standing the Democrats, I won't really be able to work out, but that's like all they fucking do. He's a little soft, yeah. Probably hasn't been going to the gym much. He's too busy worrying about being assassinated by Thought Slime or some shit. Yes, be assassinated with Thought Slime's Newfoundland charm or something. Okay, so good night. I won't keep you any longer.
That there are a number of crypto-fascist mopanoids in the Communist Party USA. I have never met a crypto-fascist mopanoid in my life. Never.
Yeah, and see, the trick he does with any negative political designation that he didn't make up himself, like synthetic left, whatever the fuck that is. Ironically, it seems to be the leftists who don't wear suits made of synthetic fibers or something. I don't know. Fuck knows. But, yeah, see, if there isn't an actual organization self-identifying with the term, whichever term he wants to avoid having himself or anyone associated with him described as, then that means it doesn't exist, which is why, according to him, Dugin isn't a Nazbol, even though he's never, like, walked back the whole idea that when you combine Stalinism and fascism, good things apparently happen.
Never have I met anyone who was a crypto-fascist mopanoid. I don't even...
Well, you've met fascists. I mean, just last night we were just looking at the people who were on the table when you were giving your laudatio to fucking Dugin, and you had like fucking French fascists. You were surrounded by French fascists. You were the Front National, for fuck's sake. Ce sont les faf, mon calice de tabarnak.
You know what a crypto-fascist mopanoid is. But
let's try using your context cues. Let's see, crypto-fascist. Do you not know what that means? That means fascists who are kind of coy about it. Like you, Caleb. Like you. And mopanoid, see, I know you're going to be shocked by this, but it comes from your surname. See, mopanoid, you take the oid off and you get moppet. So what that means is reactionaries who pretend to be leftists and are fans of your bullshit. I assume I've never heard the term before, but even having heard it once, I can kind of guess what's meant by it.
But if you know anybody who is a crypto-fascist mopanoid in the Communist Party of the United States, by all means, introduce me.
Yes, of course. Yeah, he wants to suck up to them.
I would really, really like to meet them. Really, really would love to meet such a person.
Well, yes, he loves crypto-fascists. He flew all the way to Moscow to fucking meet with them. Well, they're not even crypto-fascists,
a lot
though.
of exciting stuff is in the
Dugin's
works,
not
right?
crypto.
There's going to be some pretty good talks that go up on the web probably in early July. There's going to be a gathering at some point, and that's going to be pretty neat. I'm kind of stressing out as I figure out what's going on with that because.
And don't forget, on Friday it's Hawaiian Shirt Day. So if you want to wear a Hawaiian shirt and khakis to the office, you can go ahead, and that'd be great.
With the circumstances, it's not like you just. So that's going to be important. Very, very good. Kind of talks coming up. I'm going to see some people I haven't seen in a while and meet some new people, and that's going to be good. So fingers crossed that all goes well. The weather seems to be quite erratic, folks. I'll say that much. I am not one. As much as I might be skeptical about the intentions of some of the voices promoting climate change, I am not I can't say climate change isn't a reality because
Oh, Christ. Yes, because... Oh, fucking hell, my water bottle again. Put it over here where it's less likely to fall. Yeah, because... climate change allows him to talk about his favorite topic, which is accusing random people of being Malthusians.
The weather is so irrational, and it seems apparent to me that there is some impact on the climate. It's pretty clear there's impact on the climate from humans. That's very, very clear.
Wow, so maybe the whole fucking scientific consensus isn't wrong? That's big of you, Caleb. Gonna skip ahead. This is boring me.
On suburbs. Well, first of all, the racist origins of the suburbs is a very American thing. That's very United States centric. In most of the world, mind you, especially in Europe and the developing world, the urban centers tend to be wealthier and the suburbs tend to be poorer. The poor people who work for the rich people in the urban centers live in the suburbs. The word barrio, which is the word that is used in Spanish-speaking communities, it's like the word used for a low-income neighborhood, literally means suburb, because in most Spanish-speaking countries, the rich people live in the city and the poor people live in the suburbs. French Revolution thoughts. Suburbs. Well, no, I'm not against suburbs as a concept. I'm telling you that what suburbs mean in the United States is starting to change because of a number of factors. And that this white areas surrounding cities, the rural areas are where there's farmers, right? That's generally the way these things work. I do remember.
Yes, generally, that's safe to say. Generally, if it's a rural area, because they're farmers there. Okay.
Ridiculous anti-communist lies to sell books, and that is right. So they stopped being interested in communism, but they wanted to continue to have a career. Really gets down to it. I think that when they were communists, they believed in something. He had some good experiences, he had some bad experiences, and so then he wrote, an autobiography giving his side of the story. Very honest, to the point. But Whittaker, which they eventually made into a Hollywood movie, Howard Fast wrote a very good autobiography about his time in the Communist Party. It was called Being Red. And it ends with him, quitting the Communist Party. But, it's honest, right? I mean, he didn't, he had some good experiences, he had some bad experiences, and so then he wrote, an autobiography giving his side of the story. Very honest, to the point. But Whittaker Chambers, David Horowitz, people like that, right? They become right-wing. I think they become cynical when it really gets down to it. I think that when they were communists, they believed in something. They believed.
Now, let's just remember. Yeah, this is how Caleb Maupin in the same autobiography that describes him as that voice, that professor. He was never a professor. That sage you knew existed but were never lucky enough to meet. I really hope I never am that lucky. He just seems like a boring asshole, mostly. Okay, so this is what he says. He doesn't shy away from the word communism when explaining his political views and advocates that the U.S. move towards some form of socialism with American characteristics. Now, that first part's interesting, isn't it? Because he doesn't shy away from the word communism when explaining his political views. The thing is, there are lots of people, not all of them, many of them totally not communists, who also don't shy away from the word communism when explaining their political views. This is such a nothing statement. He just wants to have that in there just in case, people, that, his whole shtick is to find, naive leftoids who aren't going to see through his shit, and aren't going to look at that and say, well, why doesn't he just, what, is he a communist? Is he not a communist? Why does he not shy away from the word communism when explaining his political views? That does not say what his relationship with the term is. Who else didn't shy away from the word communism when explaining their political views? Augusto Pinochet. He did not shy away from the word communism when explaining his political views. Joe McCarthy, too. He didn't shy away from the word communism when explaining his political views, because his political views were anti-communist. This is the sort of fucking wiggle word that you see, that the Democrats, particularly under Barack Obama, perfected. It has words in there that are going to make some people who don't pay very close attention and aren't very discerning think, oh, yeah, totally, they get it. Yeah, finally, somebody who's on side. But it never actually promises anything. So, in this context, let's talk about people who may have previously been communists but are now cynical.
In something, and they got
something
disillusioned.
That Caleb Maupin might know a thing or two about.
They probably had some very bad experiences with communists, but they also saw that we weren't going to see a revolution, right? So they stopped being interested in communism, but they wanted to continue to have a career, right? They wanted to. Oh,
well, yeah, and it's true. If you move to the right, it's really good for your career. Maybe you know something about this, Caleb, with your media career.
Be selling books and all of that. So
he says he's got a book coming out. He's got a book coming out. This is very interesting.
They wrote outrageous, over-the-top, ridiculous anti-communist lies to sell books.
You mean like BreadTube having a plot to assassinate you?
And that is the worst kind, right? I mean, look, Howard Fast, he didn't like the Communist Party USA. And he describes some of the stuff that he didn't like in the Communist Party USA. If you read Being Read by Howard Fast, one thing he describes is that he was not allowed to use the word boy or girl when he wrote articles about children that were African American, right? Because it was considered, Communist Party USA had the rule that because black men, adult black men, are called boy, right? You know, that was like a Southern racist thing to do. It'd say, boy, boy, you know, it's a racist thing to do, right? So because of that, you could not refer to any African American child as a boy or a girl in the Communist Party publication. They had to call them youth. You could call them a youth.
Which, okay, assuming this is true, which fuck knows, youth isn't better. Look up youths. Look up or a youth on Google. Anytime you find a story about a youth, that's not a good story. That's not that kid isn't getting a fucking Nobel Prize.
And he's furious about that. Well, you know, is that a little bit of an arbitrary rule? I mean, you know, I mean, when you have to refer to a 5-year-old African American child if you're writing an article as a youth rather than a boy or a girl because of racial sensitivity, is that a little bit over the top and PC? Maybe. I don't think that's a reason to quit the Communist Party, but he's honest. That's something that I'm sure really happened. I am sure the Daily Worker did have that rule about, you know, about how one refers to an African American child. You cannot call them boy or girl. They have to call them youth. I'm sure that rule existed, and maybe it wasn't a good rule. I don't think that's a reason to quit the party. All right, I don't think that's a reason to quit the party, but you know that really happened. I'm sure. I don't think he made that up, Chomsky. I don't think he made that up. I think that really happened. It sounded like, oh, the Bolsheviks were awful until you know Lenin showed up, until like right before you know Trotsky joined. The Bolsheviks were awful. That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense that he would lie like that. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense that he would lie like that. No question about it. You know, there's also this silly story that's a myth that you know the Bolsheviks didn't want to take power and have a revolution, and they were having a meeting, and then a worker burst into the meeting and told the Bolsheviks that they better take power because if they didn't, the workers were going to rise up anyway. And you know, Trotsky repeats this myth, and it's a great story. It sounds like a great. Is that unfortunately because you know, and this is, we talk about this, but because the Communist Party, because it was a lot of very poor people, a lot of working class people, and you know their livelihoods depended on it, and they were up against the state and the FBI and all that, it became a rather authoritarian group, rather authoritarian and such. And that, you know, Nelson Peary tells the story. I believe this is absolutely
Well, okay, except the thing is that it became an authoritarian group on the exact same lines as all the other communist parties it was affiliated with, including ones where the Communist Party was not up against the state, because the Communist Party basically was the state.
true. That 1948, you know, he was a member of the Communist Party. He just joined or whatever, and they had Christian missionaries played a very big role in it. The excuse the United States used for sending troops to China in 1900, was it IRA something or other? Those groups don't have any mass base of support. I mean, it's not that, you know, not that they're wrong in wanting, you know, Irish. You know, I'm for the, you know, 32 county, was it IRA something or other? Those groups don't have groups that exist. I believe there's the 32 county sovereignty movement, there's the real IRA, and vote for independence, number one. And number two, you know, their ability to peacefully organize was being violently suppressed. And number three, there was a huge base of support for just the crowning achievement of Deng Xiaoping. Shenzhen, I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation. And now, you know, Xi Jinping is building his own model city, the Saigon New area. And it's like, it's an amazing, they call it the future city, the future hotel. I mean, it's amazing, right? And this city building, right? Building a model city. This is part of, you know, the model of socialism with Chinese characteristics is they try a policy in one city before.
Well, yeah, in here it's worth noting that Chinese characteristics, of course, means capitalist characteristics. There's nothing socialist about any of this. But this is... I wanted to hear about they silencing him. Where are we going to get to that?
There you go. Okay. Alrighty. We need, the answer to climate change is human creativity and human growth. All right. Labor accusations against China. Well, look, I'm sure there are things in China. You talk about the conditions in some of these factories, and I hear those stories too, and that's awful. But what you don't
Yes, and they're awful because the workers don't control the
hear
factories.
about is how when the Chinese workers go on strike, the government supports them. You don't.
Not always, Caleb. In fact, I mean, let's remember that it was just like last year or so that there were reports a Marxist study group was getting arrested.
That are very powerful. I mean, all that exists. I don't know what you want me to say about it. Okay. What role did the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact play in the downfall of the USSR? Well, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was in 1939. All right, that was in 1939. Soviet Union had gone to every major Western country and wanted to make a non-aggression pact. None of them would do it with them, so they went and signed a non-aggression pact with the Nazis. That was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The Nazis broke it. They broke the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, right?
Surprising exactly one person on the planet, which is Stalin. And the thing about it is, the Soviet intelligence had a full copy of the fucking invasion plan of Aktion Barbarossa. They had multiple sources confirming roughly when and where the fucking invasion was going to take place. Stalin dismissed it. Richard Zorge, who later in the 60s was recognized as a hero of the Soviet Union because he, at great risk to himself, got his hands on these plans from Nazi officials that he had contact with. He was working for Soviet intelligence at the time. He was in very deep cover. He'd been working for them since the 1920s. He had actually apparently started on Soviet instructions. He joined the Nazi Party well before the Nazi Party was anything, just so that he would be in on the ground floor. And then Stalin just kind of dismissed what he said, oh no, this is Churchill trying to get us to join the war. And it's like, I mean, the whole reason that Germany was able to get so deep into the Soviet Union in the first place is that basically nothing had been done to actually prepare for what was an extremely obvious invasion. I mean, there's a film, a Russian film that was made about the westernmost Soviet outpost at this time, which is in Brest, in Soviet-occupied Poland. And it's called Brestskaya Krepust. I think the English is just the Brest Fortress. And it's about, I mean, it's just a fairly factual just account, as a film, as a fictional film, of what it was like trying to defend the foremost Soviet outpost with the parade rifles and hunting weapons that they had on stock, because nobody was giving them anything. They were facing down tank columns with fucking air support, and what they had was the sort of guns you'd use to go out and shoot rabbits.
The Trotskyites, they made a song to mock the Soviet Union for the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They said, up in Moscow, in the Kremlin, in the fall of 39, there's a Russian and a Prussian riding up the party line.
Yeah, and part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact also was that a whole lot of German communists had taken up refuge in the Soviet Union when Hitler took over. And so part of the pact, just as a gesture of goodwill, the Soviet government just started handing these people over to Germany. In fact, there were some that weren't even in the Soviet Union. There was a guy, I forget his name, a German communist, taking up refuge in Sweden. And Alexandra Kollontai was the Soviet representative in Sweden at the time. And this German communist had said some critical things about Stalin's show trials, and she tried to convince the Swedish government to hand this guy back over to Germany, where he would almost certainly be killed. I mean, this pact is not something
that's the
that is defensible.
That was in 1939.
It was bad on every level.
Okay, the fall of the Soviet Union was in 1991. So there's about long gap between those two events. There's still some privatizations, and it's not the Soviet system exactly, but it's much more in line with the Soviet system than the rest of the former Soviet Union. All right, what do I think of the French Revolution? I'm sorry, she can't be lying about Columbia University and telling the truth about North Korea, right? Said that U.S. universities are worse than North Korea. And if some liberal says to you, well, you don't believe that, it's like, oh, well, then why should I believe what she says about North Korea? Right? Look, if she's telling the truth about North Korea, she has to be telling the truth about Columbia University. Right? I'm sorry, she can't be lying about Columbia University and telling the truth about North Korea.
What, is there some sort of property of preservation of bullshit consistency that would violate? People lie inconsistently all the time. You should know this, Caleb.
Right? Look, if she's a credible source, she's credible on Columbia University, and she's credible about North Korea. And if we're going to believe every word she says about North Korea, then I guess we have to believe every word she says about Columbia University. So
if somebody says one thing that's definitely true, that means that everything else they say also definitely has to be true? Does it... Okay. In that regard, I can't help thinking of the quote. This guy, Caleb Maupin, I think his name was, on Twitter. He decided to try to roast me for the fact that occasionally during one of my reaction videos, when he said something that was actually true, I said, yeah, that's actually true. It's called intellectual honesty. I'm not gonna, something doesn't become untrue if it was true before just because an asshole like him says it. But that was but he had a go at me for doing that. But by his definition, if I was telling the truth about that, that means I can't possibly be wrong about anything else. And yet, he doesn't seem to think that.
Liberal, whoever quotes anything she says about North Korea, say, oh, and here's what she said about Columbia University. Is that true? And if they're going to be consistent, then it has to be true. Look, there you go. It tends to work. That is just a fact. So that's going to be a big factor as well. The fact that the demand for Chinese currency is increasing. Russia has just like good cop, bad cop. You had Ronald Reagan, you had the Republicans, you had, and then you had Noam Chomsky. He was there to show that America was better, and part of doing that was giving voice to anti-imperialist perspectives. During the Obama years, there was kind of a shift, and now from the West would quote him a lot. And he was part of, it was like good cop, bad cop. You had Ronald Reagan, you had the Republicans, you had, and then you had Noam Chomsky.
Except, okay, the thing is, if you actually read Chomsky, read him, which is, the people who like to quote him, liberals like to quote, like the one or two things he'll say about electoralism in a 20-minute talk that he gives on the subject. But if you actually read him, he makes a point of specifically having a go at the liberal end of the spectrum. He makes a point of it. He doesn't spend that much time, if you find, when he looks at his media criticism, his political criticism. He's always looking at Democrats. He's always looking at, the liberal end of the media spectrum. That, things like the New Republic or something like that. The Nation or something, or the New York Times, sort of the dominant end, but also where liberal opinion tends to be concentrated, such as it is at any given time. And the reason he does that is because, he's explained this, because people have, brought it up, asked him what the deal was with that, and it's because he wants to point out that you can actually tell a lot more about a society by looking at the most humane, the most, decent, opinion that is permitted, the highest level of decency that is permitted in the official ideological spectrum. I mean, if you look at the right wing of it, you know, the sort of people that Caleb Maupin hangs out with, like the Front National, Nouvelle Droite, Eurasian movement, those sorts of people, yes, those are always going to be fucking ghouls. Right wingers are always ghouls. But the thing is, when you only look at the right wing, the left end of the officially sanctioned spectrum gets let off the hook. And so he specifically focuses on that left end of the officially permissible spectrum. So it isn't, he said he was extremely critical of the Reagan administration. That's true, but this idea...
He was there to show that America was better, and he would... Part of doing that was
by pointing out that the United States was a terrorist state that was engaged in genocide. That's what he was saying in the 80s when Reagan was president. You can look up, there's a book. Well, they're various. Unnecessary Illusions and Culture of Terrorism are two of his main books in the 1980s. So the idea is that the U.S. is somehow better because it has a culture of terrorism. And if you actually look at what he says... what he's written and said on this subject. He says, actually, when you look at the Soviet satellite states and the U.S. satellite states, it is not hard to understand why people in U.S.-dominated regimes, U.S.-backed regimes, would look at the Soviet orbit and see it as a paradise, because in terms of human rights, it was considerably better. As bad as it was... whatever else was going on, they were not, for the most part, carrying out wholesale massacres of entire villages. So what he actually says is not that the U.S. is better than the Soviet Union on this. If anything, the reason that right-wingers freak out about him is that he was saying at the time that actually, if you look at the countries that were in the Soviet orbit, they treated their people a hell of a lot better than the countries that the U.S. controlled, say, Indonesia, Nicaragua under Somoza, Colombia, Chile under Pinochet, Argentina under the generals, Vietnam under Diem. What Chomsky actually said was that the U.S. human rights record in those places was considerably worse than anything you could accuse the Soviets of outside of the Stalin period, and that's actually true. So this idea that he's the good cop to Reagan as part of some sort of prearranged thing to make the U.S. look better by pointing out that the U.S. is a terrorist state and that its client states treat people worse than the Soviet Union's client states. That's... you're reaching there, Caleb.
Giving voice to anti-imperialist perspectives. During the Obama years, there was kind of a shift. And nowadays, he doesn't play that role. He's critical of Israel. He's critical of Israel, but he doesn't support boycotting Israel. And he tends to, when it comes to Libya, when it comes to Syria, he tends to take mainstream positions. And if you follow Amy...
Actually, no, he really does not take mainstream positions. In fact, a lot of the people who were supportive of U.S. interventions really had a go at him because he actually rejects mainstream positions also on Libya. Gilbert Achcar, who got caught taking money from the British Ministry of the Defense, took mainstream positions on Libya. But Chomsky, if I remember correctly, did not. But on Syria, his positions were too anti-imperialist for quite a few people who felt that U.S. bombs were better than Syrian bombs somehow.
Goodman. Amy Goodman, Noam Chomsky, they have about the same political orientation on international issues, and their foreign policy tends to line up pretty closely with Qatar. Qatar, Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood, again, anti-Iran, but also anti-Israel. Whatever the Al Jazeera Qatar current is saying, that's what Amy Goodman says, that's what Noam Chomsky says.
Citation needed. See, the trouble for him is that Now, there's a lot I actually disagree with Chomsky on. I used to agree with him on the electoralism thing, but with each passing election, it's been harder to see this marginal utility he's on about. But he tends to actually be a hell of a lot more consistent than Caleb Maupin is. He also tends to be much more prolific in providing citations. I don't think you could actually say, because, like, first of all, Qatar isn't really anti-Israel. The Gulf states are completely in the U.S.'s pocket. The weapons, they're dependent on U.S. military aid. They're dependent on quite a lot of U.S. support, which is why anytime they were sending weapons into Syria, and they were often caught doing exactly that, those were U.S. weapons. Literally, they were just acting as a conduit at that point. So, and in fact, the Gulf dictatorships like to maintain a public posture of opposing Israel because they're trying to placate their population, because Israel is not popular as this racist colonial regime in the middle of the Arab world. But in reality, they're actually quite friendly with Israel quietly. That was one of the things that was actually really impressively demonstrated in a lot of the Cablegate documents that came out, thanks to Chelsea Manning.
And you can speculate about why that is, and it doesn't always line up.
You can speculate about whether it's true, or you don't even need to speculate, because the thing is, he wrote everything down.
If you're dissing the sisters, you ain't fighting the power, as the Black Panthers used to say, right? This is communists knew this. This is like, duh. This is like communism 101. That's why.
Yes, and what they also said was that the gay liberation movement was a real thing, and they had to relate to it. And so you diss the sisters, and you also sort of diss LGBT liberation, Caleb. So, well, then again, you're not communist. You just don't shy away from using the word. And with that, I actually have to wrap up. It's already 1 a.m. So have a good night. We will turn you off, Caleb. Done with you for the moment. And